Welcome to the Building Pathways to Healthy Minds podcast, where we share real world strategies to nurture children as they grow. Today, we're embarking on part 2 of our episode on cultivating nurturing environments across all age groups. I'm your host, Priscilla Bagley. I'm an educator, parent, and have been part of the Child Builders family for over 10 years now. In part 2 of this podcast, we are going to explore more ideas for parenting with empathy, creating yes spaces in your homes for your kids, routines, repairing relationships, and getting messy in parenting. So pull up a chair or enjoy your ride and grab some coffee and let's get started. We talk a lot about physically safe environments, but how can we be more proactive in creating emotionally safe environments for our kids? What does that actually practically look like in our homes? I think Amanda had a great example of that.
Bertrand, I think.
I think that's a great segue. Awesome next question, because I was thinking about this in Janet's story too, and in Amanda's story as well. The emotionally safe and the physically safe environments are not very far apart from each other. So in a situation where you have a physically unsafe environment for a toddler, so sure, we have beautiful crystal things on the coffee table that we don't want to get broken. We could also have tools on the coffee table, like construction tools. And I say this as somebody who went through Hurricane Harvey with small children and had to completely tear out, gut my entire house. Well, my kids were rather small. They weren't toddlers, but they were small enough to get in trouble with things like nails and sawzalls. And we even had a jackhammer around for a while. It was not a physically safe environment for children. I mean, the house was gutted, like I said. But we recognized that. And we also wanted to encourage their sort of participation and curiosity about the situation. So we had to create spaces where they were safe and could explore and feel part of what was going on. So that's not where the big, heavy machinery tools are. Those safe places for the children are not where those big, heavy machinery bits are. Yeah. But maybe there's a hammer and a nail and a piece of wood and a scrap piece of drywall. This was our situation that would be okay for them to explore and play with. So we create a space where what there is around to explore are things that are okay for them. They're not going to get in big trouble to explore it. But we also don't react big and scary and violently when they express curiosity about the things that may be unsafe for them too. So Amanda used the word vigilant before. Be vigilant around kids, be aware of what's going on with them, what they're curious about. Make sure that they can be in a space that doesn't present a physical safety hazard, knives, scissors, whatever it is for the age of your child. But then also also check your reaction, check your response. Is this okay? So I'm going to imagine, and this really did happen because I mentioned the Sawzall. How old was Asa when that happened? He was in kindergarten. So that's my youngest. So he was, how old's kindergarten? 5 or 6. Okay. So 5 or 6-year-old. This is my youngest. We have things like sawzalls around. Okay. Big, heavy thing. It is very sharp. It is very heavy. You're not going to let your 6-year-old, 5-year-old just pick it up. But it is okay, maybe, if he looks at it. It is okay if he touches it, especially if it's unplugged. If it's unplugged, keep it unplugged. It's okay. rather than seeing him express a curiosity about it and yelling at him, get out of here, it is unsafe to be in here. What we do is redirect. Is that, oh, I see that you're interested in this piece of equipment. It's very sharp. You don't want to touch this. Look, show him. It's very sharp. Show him how it's sharp and can cut a piece of paper or a piece of something, construction equipment that's there. It's very sharp. Let's not touch that. But look, here is something that is safe that you could explore and play with. So I think that's really important. It can be applied to any setting, of course, but it requires that you have your cup full enough to be able to pause and not have all that anxiety flood you about imagining your 5-year-old getting hurt in these 180 ways that immediately you can imagine, and say, okay, this is okay. What do I need to do to stay calm and to address the situation and to redirect the child?
That kind of ties into empathy as well, because what we're doing there is we're saying, we're giving them tools for the future, not just, no, don't do this because I said so. It's saying, here's the reasons why I want you to be careful around this. See, you can look at it, but I just want you to know this is super sharp. Us as adults, we want that too. So I don't just want to walk into a situation and just hear no, 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 because I said so. Like, I want to know what's going on. And I can do things better if I know somebody's doing or making a rule for my safety or for my well-being, which is, I love that you talked about kind of those yes spaces where we create, hey, this is for you. You can say yes to all these things. And then when it's a space that's maybe not okay, we're still there, we're still vigilant, and we're saying, here's the reasons why this is the reason why we don't want you to run across the road. It's because we love you so much. This is the reasons why we don't want you touching the crystal vase. And I think we do that as kids get older. This is the reason why we have a curfew, right? This is and all of that is creating an emotional space, saying to kids, hey, we can be real here. We can talk about the whys, the underneath the nose, or the waits or not nows.
I think also when you're talking about how do you, build that nurturing relationship, and environment, thinking about your routines and your traditions and things like that. Um, those are things that everybody really cherishes to help us feel safe and grounded. And they help us feel nurtured as well. When you think, like many of you probably have bedtime routines, for example, with your children. I honestly can't remember the bedtime routine I had with my older daughter. I think it was very similar to the one I had with the younger daughter, but I specifically remember the younger daughter, because we would get in we would have a bath, and then we would, get in the rocking chair. We'd read some books, and then she had me sing 3 songs, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, all these little sweet little nursery rhyme songs. And then, into bed, and then, covering up, hugs and kisses. And then sometimes there were conversations for a few minutes in bed, and then, lights out. So that's like a typical bedtime routine with, variations for different people. But I did that specifically because I felt that in order for them to be able to um, let go to go to sleep and relax enough at night to do that, they had to feel safe and nurtured, and
have predictability.
Predictability. We do this every night, and my parent is there. And I can relax, I can sleep through the night, et cetera, et cetera. And so it worked very well for me. And I think it also, as the children get older and become adults, we all develop similar bedtime routines to what calmed us and helped us to go to sleep. as children. So, and then we could do very different things too. But just being able to know that we all need a bedtime routine to feel safe and nurtured and relaxed, so that we can do what Gretchen mentioned earlier. One of the most important things is getting as much of an adequate amount of sleep that we possibly can, so that we can bring our best selves the next day.
I think the bedtime routine sometimes can sound idyllic and impossible. So people, when we're living in more chaotic situations and our own lives are a little bit unpredictable, and again, I say this as somebody who gutted her house after Harvey, but I've also traveled with my kids overseas for long periods of time, and sometimes things are
Unpredictable.
just more chaotic, and there's lots of different reasons that that might be the case for many different families. But what I've learned from my bits of chaos is that those very simple things, pieces of the bedtime routine, whether it's we take a bath before bed, or we read this story, or we read any story before bed, or we put our technology away and we're not watching cartoons all the way until we fall asleep. Whatever little piece of a ritual or routine that happens around bedtime can be preserved even in chaotic situations. It might look a little bit different. It might have to be shortened a little bit, or something. You may have to be flexible about whether it's mom doing it or dad doing it or a big brother doing it. But I found those really preserved everybody's sanity. Like, we were a lot more relaxed when we could say, no, we have to do the bedtime routine, or we have to do the dinner routine, whatever, the making a meal together and sitting together. And it doesn't have to be all the things. It has to
Right.
be a few things that your family decides is important and your children can rely on.
It's like a piece of home, even when there's chaos, and that's what those routines and predictable moments do for us. And sometimes that's even just an emotional predictability, right? Like, I know that I'm safe to say this is how I'm feeling, or it's very similar to having a bedtime routine, is creating those spaces in your home. And I was going to ask you guys who have older children, did that bedtime routine, does that really set the building blocks for later in life as they get older? And you're not tucking them in anymore, right? But is that still something that's special? Is it still something, is there some kind of predictable routine as they become teenagers that you do?
So I think it becomes very different when they're teenagers, but I think it does create the building blocks, whether it's bedtime or, for us, it's kind of like dinner. We sit together and have dinner because we are privileged to be able to do that most nights. Okay. That definitely has not changed as my children have gotten older. What's changed is it every night? No, because we've got activities going on. But when we decide it's happening, it's definitely happening, and it's happening like this.
Feels
With
like
the
home.
bedtime, yeah, with the bedtime routine, it's more that release of responsibility to the child. They're a lot more by the time they're teenagers, a lot more in charge of how they manage their going to bed. But certain things kind of stay, like they read to themselves now instead of I read to them, or they listen to a story on a audio book or something like that. But there's a lot of things they're not doing because that wasn't part of our ritual, I think.
A big part of our family was that we love food, and I come from a Persian cuisine from Iran, and we love to cook. And I remember from early on, I really got the kids involved in cooking with me. It was kind of painful to watch them um, making cookies or making eggs or whatever, pouring milk, everywhere, oil everywhere. Their dad is really perfectionist. It's very hard for him to watch that, which co-parenting is actually another, it could be
Big topic.
a big topic that we can discuss it. But the way I resolved it is like, okay, you can step away and don't watch and let me do it. So milk would be all over as they're trying to pour it. Or, anyways, there was a lot of chaos in the kitchen. But I can say that the best part of that we practiced from like elementary all the way is that my kids have learned to hang around in the kitchen and help out. They don't do it all the way always. It's not as perfect as I want it to be, but they do help out and then we do eat together. And as a result, they've learned how to cook and to be around the kitchen. And when they are
It
around
probably opens conversation around the kitchen, right?
that emotional safety that you were talking about exists because when you're cooking and helping each other to create a meal, it's an opportunity for you to talk, you know, tell me about your day. And I always have said this to my colleagues and my family. I know some things about my kids that it's more than I should know, you know. It's like the things comes out in the conversation and my husband is like, how do you know that? I said, well, when we were cooking, they just said this or they said that. You know, it's just like it's a very as a matter of fact for me because they just say it in a conversation as you're making, you know, um kebab or, you know, curry or whatever we're making. It's just
Yeah.
so it's been wonderful to see that part as it was very difficult when they were little because you actually had empathy takes time, you know, you really have to put time and be consistent. And the fact that you stick with it, making that mess, making a cookie or egg would take a lot longer than you could do it. You know, they learn how to do it, and we had that time together. It was precious, as we always talk about. Empathy is connection, and this is how we can create those connections through just routine making food and making conversations.
I love that visual of literal mess and then talking about how empathy is messy, right? We say this on our webinars. It's empathy isn't 1, 2, 3, boom, that's the perfect solution. It's like a messy process of you, and we've talked about this on this, you know, dealing with your own expectations for me in the kitchen, my perfectionism, my childhood, you know, working through all that and then still taking the time to say, even though it's messy, even though it's hard, it's a lot easier for me to just do this dish on my own, to bake these cookies on my own. That would be the easy time saving solution. But to get in the mess and say, this is worth being messy for a little while, literally, figuratively, messing my emotions and really getting to the core. That's what empathy really is. It's this messy, not perfect process that leads to connection, though. That if connection is our goal, it has to be messy. We have to have empathy.
Yeah. And as parents, you also learn because my husband has learned not to interfere with the cleaning up process. So as a family, we decided let them do it and let them clean up. And if it's not within your standards of cleaning up, you can clean all night after them. You know, it's okay. You can do it, but not in front of them. Let them do whatever they can, you know, and clean up the way according to their standards, you know, do it. And then you can clean it up later. That's fine.
For me, like just on a very practical note, for me, cleaning and having things orderly, I have found is definitely a way of control for me. If everything else is out of my control, I know I can clean and I've had to really I just walked through this yesterday. We had neighbors over and one of their favorite games is hide and seek around the house. And I could feel my anxiety rising as I'm trying to like do things and there's kids running all through the house. And I remember really having to stop, actually take the time and just be like, why is this bothering me so much? This is fun. This is childhood memories. These are the moments that I dreamed about when I dreamed of having a family and a child. So why is this bothering me? And it really did come down to I wanted control. I wanted things to be in place. And I had to let that go and say, right now, this is more important. And it wasn't easy, it was messy. Again, literally and figuratively. It wasn't like, boom, okay, now I'm perfect and I'm happy. But it was like I had to just tell myself, this is important, and being clean and perfect right now isn't as important. I care more about emotional safety and kindness. So it's hard. It can be really hard. One thing in child builders that I've learned, I talk about this sometimes in our trainings, that I've learned so much in my 30s working in child builders, things I didn't know was, growing up, I had a really sweet family, but it was often a family that, for the way my parents grew up, and it was just, they were parenting the way they had been parented, was some emotions were good and some emotions were bad. You know, being happy all the time, that was what we wanted to see. The sadness, the anger, you know, let's not show that. Let's get over that easily. Let's pick ourselves up. And so I think you all can speak to this probably better. Is why is it so important for us as parents to tell our kids, no matter what, whatever you're feeling, you can talk to me about it. We can show that in our homes.
I'm glad you brought that up. But first of all, I love that story, Amanda, about the cooking, because I was like your husband and did not nurture that kind of, experience in my home, to my regret now. And so now when I cook with my grandkids, it's messy and, more like what you experienced. I wanted to try and see if I could switch that around in the next generation. So
Keep a generation.
even though things can change. And I love the analogy that empathy is can be messy, and connection can be messy, and also that whole thought about rupture and repair. That
Absolutely.
we have great times and then things go wrong, and then it's not so great. But being able to apologize is so important, I think, in keeping that relationship positive and empathetic. Um, and it's everything you can do. Like, I like to, I think somebody very much wiser than me said this: be the person you want your child to be. And
Mm,
so
I
having
love that.
role model all the things that you want to see your children do. And like Priscilla, you said the whole thing about running through the house and the kids. That's me too, because I want my house, to be clean, and it drives me nuts. And I'm that person who will go behind people who clean dishes and clean the dishes and
Oh,
all.
yes. Me
Very
too.
That's not the person I want my children to be,
Right.
So being able to look at yourself, and you talked about the different emotions, the negative emotions, and not just being able to accept all the emotions, which is very hard for most of us, because most of us were raised with, don't get angry, don't get, sad, only be happy. But being also able to understand that it's, besides that it's okay to express those emotions, knowing why we feel that way, what's within us that is causing us to feel anxious when the kids are running through the house like that, or you don't want them to mess up the kitchen because or for me, it was like I didn't have time to let them experiment with the food, and also my sense of self in being a great cook and baker was all wrapped up into that. So that if we were cooking and company was coming, oh no, they were not allowed to help me, because it was my own stuff about what if the food was bad or didn't look right? What would people think about me? So understanding ourselves and where that all comes from, and then saying, you know, that's think about not only understanding that, but how you can do better, because I don't want my kids to be that person who does that to their kids too. So thinking about why you feel the way you do, trying to change that, trying to role model the person you want your children to be. But you can't do that unless you make the real change yourself.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, I think there's a moment too where we have to give ourselves grace and say, this is why I'm feeling this way, and that's okay. And maybe there are moments, right? Maybe you guys feel differently about this, but where you go, you know what, today I don't know that I have the capacity to let my children cook with me. And that's
Oh,
okay
yeah,
too.
absolutely.
But understanding when are the moments when I can give up that anxiety for today, kind of like what I did yesterday. I could have run behind them and cleaned everything up, which was my initial desire. Or you can let it go. And then there's times where you have that emotional capacity. And then there's some days where you have to say, I don't think I can do that today. And that's okay. I can give myself grace for today. And maybe I need to fill my cup somehow, right?
Absolutely.
Priscilla, to answer
Yeah.
to your question about why is it important to allow our children to have a full range of sort of emotions, and that's not just all happy and positive emotions. And I think it's what you're all saying. Just bring it back around and say, emotions are ways we know that something's going on. So
So
it's
good.
sort of like when you feel pain in a part of your body, it's notification to your brain that something's wrong or something needs to be addressed or something is different or a muscle is getting stronger or something is happening in that part of your body. I think it's the same with emotions. So when we're feeling that rising pressure of anxiety that I know you and I share a lot, it is a notification. What is going on here? What is underneath this emotion? And when our children are expressing those kinds of positive, negative, complicated, all of the emotions, it also gives us a hint about being curious about what's underneath that emotion. So when Amanda's son walks in and is expressing rudeness and anger, oh, something is going on here. Or,
When
all of
my
that.
daughter's being very whiny, instead of just saying, stop it, something is definitely going on.
And also, one thing I learned this week too, I just kind of was like, oh yeah, that's important too, is while we don't want to take out our emotions on our kids, we don't want to react to our emotions in a way that's harmful for our kids. So we are going to want to check that reaction, like we talked about earlier. It is also okay for them to see us true reacting, responding, having a full range of emotions too. Because I think that can be kind of harmful for kids if they never see their parents, any other way but happy and smiley. That just, by the time they're teenagers, they realize that's weird and different
And then
and
almost feel like,
unattainable.
right, like things were hidden then, probably.
Right. Either you're perfect and I'm not, or you're not being honest with me. So one thing that happened to us this week is I have rearranged the youngest child's room because he has a problem with his wall we have to tear it out and fix it. And there's a mold problem. We're fixing that. So we had to rearrange things in his room. And in doing that, I realized that his desk, which is a really nice, was supposed to be my desk, but it doesn't fit in my space, is now his desk. He's just destroyed it. He's taken paints and, oh, he's an artist. I mean, obviously he destroyed it. Of course he destroyed it. I know this. I know he would do this because he has paints on the desk and he has, I don't know, knives for some, like carving knives and all the pencils. And he's used all of those things to basically carve up the front of the desk. And in the moment that I noticed that, he was there. And I was saying things like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you have done this. And he was saying things back to me because he's 13. It's a smart, calm, rational 13-year-old. He was saying things like, I already heard you tell me it was not okay. I heard you. You don't need to keep telling me. And I was like, okay, I just had to react. So I told him, I said, you're watching me feel this in real time. And now I'm going to take a deep breath and it's going to be okay. So small thing, little thing, but I did feel in that moment that he needed to kind of see the real, these are feelings. There's something here. And then it was resolved and it was okay. And it was, I understand and we'll make a different plan and let's see what we can do. That's it.
And I like that that's like real life. We don't always have time to step back and be like, okay, I'm feeling frustrated. Why am I feeling frustrated? Okay, this is going to be my curated reaction to my child. That happens to me all the time where I'm like, something just happens. I didn't know it was going to happen. They're right there. And so, yeah, I think it's okay too for us to show we're having emotions as well, but let's talk this through. Let's open communication. You guys have all kind of touched on this, and this can be a whole show in itself, but when we have those moments where maybe we didn't react the way we wanted to in our perfect heads of perfect scenarios, right? How do we repair? What does that look like? How do we say sorry? And when do we do that?
Well, I have to say, as a parent of two boys, whom we've tried to raise them assertively and to have their own opinion and own up to their opinion, it's not easy to parent, kids who are assertive and they can critically think and respond and not accept what you say and not agree with you and express those opinions. So I know that there's been many times that I didn't react the way I should have, and I learned eventually that delayed reaction is the best way to go. Just don't do anything. Stop, breathe and think, and that stop, breathe and think needs to be at least half an hour. Just get your thoughts together. I learned that the best thing is admitting. The best thing is owning up to your mistake and just say it. I messed up. I know I messed up. I should know better, being in this business, learning about all of this tools and skills. I should have mastered these, but no, I messed it up. And sometimes you're not expecting what your kids are going to say or do. And you have all these things in your head that you think is going to go this way, but it's not. And that's all right. I think the best thing is to let them know that, I was telling Gretchen, always telling your kids that you love them and they're the most important thing in your life. And even when you make mistakes, it is for their, like, you have their best interest in mind and you are doing your best as a parent. And you are going to screw up. You are going to make a mistake. But that doesn't take away from how much you love them and how much their future and their safety, emotional safety is important to you, and just take it from there, own up to it. And I usually try to bring humor into the story every time I mess up. And I make fun of myself when I screw up, and instead of being like really heavy and, serious about it, I just crack a joke in the middle of it. I'm like, that was dumb. Like, that's exactly what child builder is going to tell me not to do, and I did it. So I just crack a joke about it. And they kind of look at me, and first they're kind of looking at you is like, okay, that's not funny. And then they light up. They do light up, because they kind of like to see you making a fool out of yourself and apologize. So they kind of have fun with it. And I don't think it's ever made me feel weird about apologizing and making a fool out of myself. I'm a human. I'm not perfect. I know I'm not perfect. I know my kids are not perfect. I know my husband is not perfect. I know our relationship is not perfect. But I know that we are growing together after every difficulty that we've overcome. We've become stronger and we've become more connected as a family. And I trust in this. I trust in this process. And
I
that's
love
where we stand.
I love like using humor to connect with our kids.
Yeah.
Authenticity is what that sounds like. And maybe it's okay too for us to say, you know what, when I reacted that way, it's because I was scared, or I reacted that way because that touched on something that I'm
Absolutely.
still dealing with, and that takes what Amanda was talking about, which is stop time, breathing, listening to yourself, stepping away from the situation to think, why did I react that way? And how can I repair it? Sometimes I think when I have to repair something, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't even bring it up. Maybe she's forgotten, or maybe, it's like
It
if I
doesn't
bring
go
it
away.
up, then it's real, and then we have to talk about it. Maybe she'll just forget it, but I don't think that's ever the healthy way. The better way is to go back in and say, man, I did not react the way I wanted to in that situation.
It takes
Really,
courage. It takes
yeah,
courage. A conversation Gretchen and I had. It takes courage to own up to your mistakes,
yeah,
and you
hard,
have
it's
to be
messy.
courageous as parents.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree. I love those stories, Amanda, and I just wanted to add how important it is, because for people who can never say they're sorry, again, we're role modeling for them that it's okay to say you're sorry. How many of us like being around people like that? I mean, I
Exactly.
never want to be in a relationship with somebody who wouldn't apologize if they did something wrong. You just set yourself up for constant conflict with somebody, and you can't ever have a real authentic connection with someone like that. So being able to role model that in a healthy way, I think is just so important.
But some people might take that as a weakness, so we also have to be careful with that, that.
Well, and I think that's the great thing about Child Builder's philosophies, and what we know and research has shown us is that oftentimes these things are countercultural. We live in a culture that says, always know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Don't apologize. Be the toughest, be the best. And I've had to learn as a parent that some of those things just were wrong. They're wrong. And I can tell my child, like, man, I don't always know the right answer.
Yeah.
I'm messing up all the time, and it's countercultural and it's messy, and it takes, I like that, like courage. It's courageous to go against the flow of what's supposed to be successful in
Yeah.
our culture, our society. I think we have gotten through a lot of things, and this has been such a good episode. We have a lot of resources on our website, childbuilders.org. Some of our favorite books about empathy, connection. We have just a whole list of things. If you're interested in some more resources for that for your home, we have the developmental steps that kids go through on our website. A lot of the things we talked about. So we are so glad you joined us. We've been so excited about this for a long time. And it's good for us, I think, too, to take time to just talk to each other and just check in. And so we're honored that we got to be with you today, whether that's in your car or online, or at your desk, at home with a cup of coffee or tea. Thank you for listening, and we would love for you to join us again. We're going to have more in-depth conversations about a lot of the topics we covered today. And we're going to have a place where you can send us questions. So that will be on our website. And we appreciate you and hope to see you for our next episode. Thank you so much.
Stand strong, stay safe, everyone.
Hi, thank you for having
Right.
us.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you.